My name is Armand Rendon, and I'm editor and CEO and everything else. Chief cook and bottle washer of Somos Escrito magazine and Somos Escrito Foundation Press. And we're making an effort right now to raise funds through a Kickstarter that started about a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks ago. And we have a meeting with us, La Crema de la Crema, among Chicano and Chicana Sci-Fi writers. We have Ernest Hogan, Maria Acevedo, Martin Hill Ortiz, Kathleen Alcalá, Rudy Garcia. Am I missing someone? Okay. So I'm going to just ask you a general question, and that is to tell us where you're zooming in from and what your favorite form of writing is. What genre you prefer. Let's start with you, Ernesto. All right.
Okay, well, I'm coming here from Glendale, Arizona, right next to Phoenix. I work in Phoenix, so it's people ask me where I am. It's usually there. Oh God, it's my favorite type of writing. It's a toss up between if I know I'm going to get paid for it, and but then there's also the stuff that I really the stuff that I get inspired by what's around me and all that, and it for some reason tends to become science fiction for me. I mean, it just means the way I grew up and all that. I kind of also I noticed the older I get, the more everything starts looking like science fiction to me. I don't know why. I remember when it wasn't like this, It's just like
Right.
But that seems to be what I would do. I do most like I get most success with that.
All right. Mario.
Hello. Yes, I'm Mario Acevedo. I zooming in from Denver, North Denver, Colorado. And my favorite type of writing right now, I've been pulled into writing a lot of horror, which is speculative fiction. I enjoy that. I also enjoy writing crime fiction. I'm getting started on that, and I have written sort of fantasy and a lot of spoofs on science fiction that I like. I like making fun of pop culture and conspiracy theories in my work. So that's where you get it.
Oh, good. Kathleen.
Hi. I'd have to say that speculative fiction has always been what's attracted me. In many cases, it's in the guise of historical fiction because it's those gaps between what we know and what we're guessing that I like to write about. So you can call it slipstream, you can call it speculative fiction, what you like, but it's those what ifs that attract me.
Martin.
Yes, well, I'm a little all over the place. I've probably had about 35 short stories published. I'll say 10 of those have been science fiction. Probably 20 of them have been mystery, and about 5 other, the category of other. Finished a nonfiction book. I write a lot of poetry and occasional musical. So I'm a little all over the place.
Yes, I've seen some of your poetry too. Rudy. Thank you.
Rudy Garcia, also writing as Rudy Che Garcia, also writing as RCH Garcia. I've had a dozen books and short stories published, all in the speculative fiction area. My first novel won me this little button from the International Latino Book Awards for sci-fi fantasy genre. And I want to really only say one thing right now. I've got another thing to say later. I'm speaking from the standpoint of a Chicano sci-fi fantasy speculative fiction author. And at one time, there was no such thing. The question asked was, where's all the Chicano sci-fi writers? Well, there weren't any because we originally started as Mexicans, And then Mexico lost half of its territory and wealth to the United States, which means that my ancestors also lost the wealth. And so not many of us went to college, like the white sci-fi authors who later became famous, and now their books are movies and all that. Mm-hmm. And the reason for this Kickstarter is in fact part of reparations, even if we have to put in our own money to correct that. After the question of where's all the Chicano sci-fi writers, the sci-fi writers started sending in stories, and the magazines would go, we can't publish something like this because you've got strange names in here like Jorge, Eleuterio, and whatever, and Francisca. And it's got Spanish in it. It won't sell. There's not an audience for it. Pretty much the same things that they told the Black writers and the Native Americans for decades. So I'm here to say that as far as writing what I've done, just a mere dozen stories is just the beginning. More for the future writers, the young writers. There should be and will be a lot more opportunities for us to express ourselves in our way of what future we see for Mars or for space stations, et cetera. And this anthology is an important part of that. Just as holding bake sales so that our kids in our neighborhood schools can have whiteboards like the rich schools, or holding tamaladas so we can have playground equipment in our neighborhood schools. This is much the same thing.
Hopefully on a grander scale, and right?
And a playground?
Well, thank you, all of you. Really, actually jumped ahead, because that's exactly the question that I was going to place to all of you now that we've met you, and that is, what is the significance that you see of our publishing this Chicano Sci-Fi anthology? Why is it important? What does it mean to you? What does it mean to future writers and so forth? So again, let me start with Ernest.
Well, basically, I really question a lot of it. There is that, publishers don't look at us and say, "Oh boy, that's going to make us a lot of money," and it's for like irrational reasons and all that. I think we have to, they didn't look at, though they probably did look at, Bruce Lee had to break through to say, oh wow, you can make a movie with Chinese guys, running around doing these martial arts. I imagine they probably were just saying, oh, that's not, people aren't going to go see that. So we're kind of trying to make this breakthrough, and I really do feel that proving to them that we can make money, that there's an audience, that people are willing to pay for us, and all that is our biggest thing. I said we're like, we have to raise our own money, because these corporations are going, hey, that looks like a good money maker. We'll invest in that. But also, I say the last 10 years, I've been selling more. One of my sales come from editors approaching me rather than the other way around, and I'm going, so okay, that's happening, and I do get some nibble from like filmmakers and all that, but that's of course another difficult thing. I had a close call, several months back, and I said the guy, we were doing Zoom meetings and talking about he's going to show me a script and talking about money and all that, and then suddenly nothing. And I kind of imagined him going to the people who were going to be his backers and showing him what he wanted, and having them recoiling in horror and all that. So it's like we kind of have this thing to prove, and most of it is just by writing great stuff and getting it out there to readers.
Right. Excellent. Mario, please.
Well, I'll have to say that any anthology from any background always has a hard time getting. I mean, even anthologies, if they get published, you notice the big publishers seldom put out any anthologies because they're a hard sell. So I think we need to look at that and not see it as somebody's out to get us because we're Chicanos or whatever. They're not going to do our work. We have to do the best, not by our work. We have to do the best that we can in what we're doing in our stories. Provide great stories. I'm involved in several anthologies, and one of them is that this guy's got money and he's willing to push it, and so we have to take a look at that. That any anthology from any direction is going to be swimming upstream. So we have that to contend with. Why I am participating in this is I saw this as an opportunity to promote my work, to be part of the Chicano community writing science fiction. I think we've written a lot of work. I think part of the issue is we haven't written enough of it. I'm involved in a lot of creative writing programs, and it's very seldom that Chicano or Latino writers write any speculative fiction or write any science fiction or any what we consider genre fiction. So that's one of the things that we need to do to get that out there. And the reality is that the odds are stacked against any writers unless you know George Clooney in person. So that's what we have to do. But I am honored to be part of this anthology, and I'll do what I can to make it a success.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Kathleen.
Well, I have worked in over 30 anthologies at this point. Many of them are speculative fiction. I was looking through, you see some behind me in the bookshelves, but this was one that came out a few years ago from University of Texas Pan Am, published by Bilingual Press, Fantasmas, Supernatural Stories by Mexican American Writers. There's one edited by Daniel Olivas called Latinos in Lotus Land, which has a very strong speculative fiction vibe to it, if any of you had work in that one. And then Latinx Rising came out fairly recently, and is the closest thing to what we're doing right now. I'm delighted to have my work in El Porvenir, because this is the first collection that overtly recognizes science fiction and fantasy in the context of Chicanismo, of those of us whose families crossed the border or were crossed by the border between los Estados Unidos and Mexico. My story in particular is about a young person who's called to join Los Voladores to participate in a ritual of flying that predates the foreign invasions and looks forward to a future none of us anticipated. To do so, he must recall his past and confront the trauma he thought he had left behind. And so you see how in the sort of writing I'm interested in, we blend the past with the future. The future is always infused with the ideas of the past. The past is where we learned a lot of the things that we're going to need in the future. We're not only Chicanx, but rascuache, one of my favorite words. What is rascuache? The ability to make something from nothing, to make do with what is at hand and create a new type of beauty and functionality out of it. In other words, we're the people who've been preparing for El Porvenir all along. So let's ask an audience to join us for this journey.
Well, thank you. Martin.
Yes, recently on my blog, I put together a series of posts about cultural wars and who gets to define history and who gets to define literature. And a lot of that's gone on in the last 10 years, or it's heightened in the last 10 years, let's put it that way. I did write a bit about science fiction, and I suppose everyone here knows about the puppy wars that took place in the last few years. But as I said, I also write mystery, and I looked at the best mystery short story series anthologies of the past couple of years, 2021 and 2020. And the one that is edited by Otto Penzler had 20 authors, all white, but none white Hispanic. It had no blacks, it had no Asians, and that was 2021 and 2020. It's the narrowness of the voice of those authors, and I've read the books and anthologies, and I reviewed them. I mean, they can be quite good. They certainly had great names to them, and they actually had great names who also failed, unfortunately. But Sarah Paretsky wrote one of my favorite stories in this, and she's certainly a pro. So inclusion of more voices, I think, really is an essential story that we have to go with, because otherwise it becomes this homogenous male, repetitive Phil Marlowe detective that goes out there, or those alpha male police. And that's really is unfortunate. In 2021, Otto Penzler had as the guest editor Lee Child, who certainly is as alpha male a writer as anyone is, and for what it's worth, he wrote the absolute worst intro I've ever read to an anthology. It was just absolutely terrible. It was Bart Simpson level. So we need inclusion. Let me stop there before I keep droning on.
What does Chicanismo, I think Mario used the term, what does it have to offer to science fiction? What are we talking about of that will engage more Mexican Americans and Latinos in this genre? So they'll buy the books, they'll buy the anthology and so forth. What is it? What do we offer?
Well, I think recognizing themselves in their stories, but as active protagonists, both as protagonists and villains, both sides of the coin there. Hitting on stories that I guess are linked to what's going on right now in the world, and having our own sentiments in it. I mean, our sentiments are just as valid as anyone else's. I mean, that's what I always tell every new writers. Sometimes they're hesitant about writing, and I tell them, look, your viewpoint, just the fact that you're alive, gives you permission to say whatever you want. Mm-hmm. So I think that's we put on there. As far as what makes the kind of an engaging story. And this is the weird thing, is that like Chicanos love, or like all Latinos, we love fantasy stories. We consume comic books and things like that, and we love science fiction. I loved science fiction growing up, so it's putting ourselves right in those stories, in a way to engage that audience, and and to put our own, not just twist on it, but our own perspective on it, and into which way things are going, and then perhaps that that there could be a better way than what we're told the world has to unfold. I know I do echo a lot of the things that Martin said about. That's why I'm no longer so active with mystery writers or thriller writers, in that it's pretty much a monolithic entity there that just sees things in one particular way, and I think that's what we have to look at. So I wish I could be, if I had the definitive answer to you, I'd be making lots of money writing that particular story, but it's something that we have to, we're going to have to work with, put our stories there, kind of chip away at the monolith until we get a lot more recognition, actually. And the other thing too is that we all have a different takes. I mean, like La Llorona, for example. There's that movie that came out, La Llorona, which bombed, and part of the reason it bombed is that every Chicano who grew up has their own version of La Llorona, and you go and you see that movie and you're like, well, that's not my Llorona. Where the hell should I watch that movie, right? So that's the other side to that. Is to pull these things out and to present them in a certain way, and do it with a sense of empathy. I think that with the general population, we have more in common than what we think we do, and I think it'd be a good way to kind of leverage that.
Ernest, you want to?
Yeah.
What do we have? What do we have to offer to sci-fi?
Well, actually, I tend to tell people who want to be writers, if there's something you know about that you've never seen in a book, that's what you should be writing about. And actually, we have a lot of that.
Mm-hmm.
It's just it just our culture is, because we're actually a large complex of cultures rather than one monolithic one. And yes, there's also very, like, all the different variations of La Llorona and El Cucuy. That's a. You want to start an argument, get people from different parts of the country talking about that you'll get some, but it also comes from interesting ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So yeah, I think we've got this sort of wonderful, like, lost galaxy of material for that. And it's kind of funny. So sometimes a Latinx or Chicano writer, like, they're kind of intimidated and afraid of using this stuff, because it's like this is their stuff that only their family knows about and all that, and you've got to kind of break that barrier, decide, and because I think I keep getting told, oh, where do you get all these original ideas? I haven't read anything like that before, and it's it comes from my life and my culture that I live in, and that and the two are kind of inextricably interlaced, and I, basically just having writers of our background, just going to make fiction more interesting, culture more interesting.
Yeah, exactly. Kathleen, or?
Yes, well, to address the La Llorona subject, Norma Cantu and I are co-editing an anthology of fiction, nonfiction, and poetry about La Llorona, which we hope will be out in a year. We're in negotiations right now with the publisher. And I guess I have to say I have been madly stealing this material for years now in terms of science fiction and fantasy. My first novel, Spirits of the Ordinary, was just brought back into print by Raven Chronicles Press here in the Seattle area. And when it was first published in 1997, the agent approached maybe 24 publishers before anybody would take it, because it is about things that we don't usually talk about. But 20 years later, we are talking about these things. We're talking about Jews in Mexico. We're talking about having the unseen as visible as the seen. We're talking about twins who are of questionable sexuality, and all sorts of things that people just weren't writing or talking about 20 years ago. I notice a lot of you are involved in, let's see, it's both horror and mysteries, right? So they're both genre types of writing as opposed to literary writing. And I have always assumed that it was easier to break in as if you're writing genre than to write literary fiction, but maybe that's not the case.
Martin, do you want to?
Let me think here. What was the question again?
What is the Chicanismo?
Yes.
How
Okay.
does that contribute to the whole field of science fiction?
Yes. I guess maybe because I'm in Puerto Rico and because I am from the Southwest, and Armando knew my mother very well, that I'm both Chicano and probably mixed Latino. I feel as though I'm a Puerto Rican these days. I've been here for 20 years. So I think, to me, all of this is about the Latino voice. I don't want to negate the Chicano voice, but there's a great Latino voice in literature. I mean, we virtually invented magical realism and with the Chicano aspect of that and my background, I've always felt as though I've been kind of a stranger in a strange land, and that is as it was said before, that the U.S. just kind of barged itself across the continent and took over New Mexico, where I'm from, and of course the adjoining states. With this, I've always felt as though, partly being very white looking, and I'm half Latino, half Chicano, that I have this perspective of being both a bit different, but at the same time totally integrated into American history. And I think that's what we can say, that we are a part of Mexican history. We are part of American history. And that's a unique perspective that people need to hear. We have a strong identity and a strong sense of family. And as many have pointed out, our voices have not been well heard.
Well, that echoes one of the reasons that I started up the magazine, and that was to provide a voice and venue for certainly established writers, people who are publishing books and so forth, but also emerging writers, new writers, young people who didn't know where to go to get their stuff published, or how to get it published. And they heard about the magazine, and they trusted their work into my hands, so to speak, And it's always been almost a sacred thing for me to start working with someone who was new in the writing field, and give them as much support as possible. But that really points out the fact that we need more venues for people to publish. We need more people to be writing. I guess the question I'm kind of leading to is, how do we attract more young writers nowadays to write science fiction, horror, fantasy, speculative, whatever it might be, as a way to express themselves? What do we tell young people besides to donate to the Kickstarter? What do we tell them? Anybody?
I used to be a teacher, first, second grade. I taught in Spanish, primarily Mexicano kids, also Salvadoreños, for 10 years in Denver inner city schools. And one of the things I learned from that, which you hear from We Need Diverse Books and many other places, is that kids need to see themselves in the literature. If you want to get them interested in learning how to read, there have to be books written by us, first voices, not only Chicanos, all first voices, that they can relate to, that have characters in them with Spanish surnames. The Native Americans are no different than us. They need it as well. The Negros need it as well. Where I think we are slightly different is that, as opposed to the science fiction that's been written in this country for the past 100 and maybe 50 years, we've been here tens of thousands of years. Half of us, half of ourselves have been here for tens and tens of thousands of years. We're writing about a land that our ancestors inhabited for that long or longer. Maybe not Denver itself, but California, or maybe not California, but the Southwest. It's all the same. This is our land, has been our land for such a long period of time. It's left imprints in our psyche, for that matter. For all I know, genetically, it's there too. Now, the white science fiction you read is from people who've only been here since a couple of 100 years, 250 years. And they're not only not on their native land, they're not here in their native language. They came from Dutch language, German language, et cetera, right? So what we have and where we come from It might be better, I don't know, but it's definitely different. And as Mario pointed out in two different ways, he has people who are averse, maybe, or not eager, or he doesn't have many people to write speculative fiction. Well, they need more examples that are based in this land, and in however we deal with the language, in a language they understand, that is our language.
Right. And
I think they get that, just like the little kids in my first grade. I would give them tons of books in Spanish written by Chicano authors, or Latino authors, whatever, and they loved it. They loved it. What Mario is saying is there's not as many for him to show his students, to give, to provide them the inspiration or the models of why they should get into that writing. And that, well, everybody's already said something about that, I think.
Yeah, it's
So-
me too that think really. It was almost, I think, a natural tendency on my part when I started writing novels for young adults back in 2012, 2013. I got the idea to do a story about a kid in San Antonio, in the barrio San Antonio, and he builds his own scooter, and it turns out to be a magical scooter. And so that's already, you know, you see. But then the scooter somehow enables him to go into the past. He ends up, first time that he uses it, he cracks up and ends up waking up in a field outside of San Antonio a couple of days before the final attack by the Mexican army in 1836, right? And I didn't even realize that I was doing it until I really got into it. I said, wait a minute, this is, I'm just, where did I get this? This is time travel. So, and I've been writing or reading sci-fi since I was a kid. Certainly in high school, I just gobbled everything I could. So I didn't realize that, I was writing a book that had fantasy, science fiction, and some of the issues about time travel, because the kid ends up in San Antonio on his fourth travel back in time, only about 10 or 12 years before he's actually born. So the family that he meets and works with, becomes familiar with, don't know him, but he knows them. So we get into all these situations where, does he if he tells somebody, will the future change for him or whatever, So that's picking up from what Rudy said about it's kind of like in our genes, but I think it's also has to do with kids reading science fiction, becoming familiar with that genre, or horror or fantasy, and I don't think the fables that the kids are read when they're little can accomplish that. So maybe that's another level of that we need to that approach, and that is reaching out to kids on our own, maybe making presentations at schools or whatever. I'm not sure what it would be, but making kids more familiar with what science fiction is and why it's important, and to become writers. Maybe it'll work into their genetic framework, as Rudy puts it.
Well, I have one of the things here. I have some thoughts to share. To hopefully get success with this. The first thing, obviously, for all of us to do the best work that we possibly can, and the second one is to come up with a great cover for our anthology, whatever that means. Okay, something very evocative, eye-catching, and at the same time, all of us start to think about who we can contact to leverage like reviews and positive information what we get, and so in that regard, just sort of keep your eyes open, put your feelers out, it'd be some person that you think might show an interest. I mean, just watching the news or reading the newspaper or a particular blog or something like this, and just start putting all that together. So when this work comes out, we can like shotgun it out there and say, hey, we have this great piece out there and push it that way, promote it that way, rather than expect people to come knocking on our door. And but a good cover will show that this is a serious work. It's not just something that we're doing kind of off the cuff or anything like that. And present us the best way that we can. So that's my
Right. That's
It's
that's
true.
my
Cover
that's-
art makes a big difference.
right. Yeah, just getting, because you never know. I mean, just a newspaper, you'll see an article, somebody's written about something, you say, okay, I'll keep that in mind. When the book comes out, send them a little press release and say, hey, you'd written this, maybe months ago. Would you be interested? And here you go. Now, of course, every person who is interested in writing is, reviewing books is just facing an avalanche of
Right.
work. So we're kind of going against that, but, put it out there. And, the different kind of mystery, like you got Mystery Scene magazine, you got Lotus, the genre magazine. Say, hey, if you guys are really serious, you guys talk big about diversity, here's this work right here, and put it out there that way.
exactly.
Yeah, I'd like to say that if we can take advantage of the fact that we're a crossover thing. We're because I have a lot of contacts in the science fiction field, but there's also the whole Chicano Latino field, and between those, the sales of my novels have gone way up, and that's also thanks to my contacts with Latinx academics. I mean, they have basically promoted my work and caused them to be selling well beyond the normal shelf life that they would have. So I think it's sort of you got to kind of think outside the box. You got to think outside the thing. Also, I'd like to just say a hooray to all these people out there who start publishing companies and magazines, because I found that New York. New York has not been that friendly towards me, but I've people outside the box, outside the field there have always given me a chance and all that. So I'm hoping that if we can see more of that happening too, but also basically promote the hell out of your work, promote the anthologies you're in, but promote them. That's just let the world know.
We're trying our best, and we have a lot to work with. But resources again is another issue. That's why to bring it back to the Kickstarter, it would be a tremendous help if more people, whoever's watching this, digs down deep and gives us as much as they can, or as little money as they can, but something to keep the ball rolling. We want to continue as a company. We're a nonprofit organization, by the way. I should point that out. Somos Escrito Literary Foundation. We publish the magazine Somos Escrito, and we've started publishing books. And actually, myself, Scott Duncan Fernandez, who is kind of our tech person in control, Jenny Arizari, both of them are associate editors of the magazine. We're doing our level best to keep Somos Escrito a venue, and getting support from anyone who is into sci-fi, who is into good fiction, into supporting Latino and Chicano writers is the kind of person we want to donate to the Kickstarter. I really appreciate your time. We're coming up on the hour. We have a little bit more time, but I do want to thank you for participating today. I hope that more people will get the word and donate to the Kickstarter. I want to shout out a thanks to the Kickstarter people that gave us this opportunity. As you may know, they named us or designated us as a project we love. So that helps us to be seen by more people across the spectrum of persons who follow Kickstarter type things. So Please help us. The persons here with us today, please help us get the word out. All our other writers are also doing their level best. So with that, I would we'll have to close for now. This shows me, by the way, and everybody who is interested in science fiction or literature in general, that very robust writers out there, very dedicated writers in this particular field, but we do need more help in order to encourage others, other young people who are writing and looking for a genre to latch on to begin writing, and maybe eventually write that great science fiction story. I think all of us around here would love to do that, with Chicano characters, Latino characters, unlike the first couple of years of Star Trek, but all different colors except brown, as I recall.
Well, actually, I've written about him. There was a Commander Dominguez who apparently had complained to Captain Kirk about not getting his chili peppers, and it's like a joke thrown out there. But he's the only Mexican in their universe.
Well, there was Roberto Montalban, if you remember, who was Khan.
Yeah, I know the greatest villain of all time was the Chicano.
Yeah, so
On the screen, yeah, Ricardo
Ricardo.
Montalban. Yeah, so let's not forget that.
Yeah.
And then they had to recast him as that
Yeah,
English
yeah.
guy. So,
Benedict Cumberbatch.
yeah,
Not
no,
exactly.
yeah, no. Ricardo Montalban would have wiped the floor with him.
Well, he did.
Yeah, it was amazing to see somebody who could out-ham Kirk.
Yes.
That was amazing. That in itself was pretty good. It was great.
Well, on that note, thank you very much. This will be airing. Scott will be getting this out through all the social media platforms that are available. And again, thank you very much. We'll be seeing you again because this is really fun and very enjoyable
Good
and
thing.
educational.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you
keep
so
me
much.
posted.
Adios.
Adios.
Yeah.
Great meeting you all.
Take care.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you so much.